I work for Marie Curie Cancer Care. Actually, I work for Marie Curie. And we offer care and support to people who have a terminal illness. And we work across the UK. We cared for over 39,000 people over the last year. And they asked me to talk about dying and flourishing. And that was the title. And I said, do you know, I'm not going to talk about dying and flourishing, because actually I can't see that people will put dying and flourishing in the same sentence together. So what I'm going to do is tell you a really, really personal story. It's about my flourishing, and it's about how if I flourish, you flourish. If you flourish, the patients and their families flourish. And right at the end, we're going to test how much we've flourished, because I'm going to ask you to do an interactive exercise with me, and I'm going to get my own back on Brendan, and I'm going to invite him to stand up here and be interactive at the front. So, I decided that I'm going to talk about, can ducks fly? Okay, so can ducks fly? What sort of conditions do they need in order to fly? Is flying learned, or is it intuitive? Is it in your head, or is it in your heart? And what on earth have ducks flying got to do with dying, nurses and flourishing? Well, Aristotle once said that if you educate the mind without educating the heart, that's no education at all. And I'm going to tell you about the education of my heart. Now, you can see I'm a very mature lady. It would be fair to say, you weren't supposed to laugh at that. That's the first heckler. You can see I've got many years of nursing experience. I'm not going to tell you how many, it's that many. And I've always believed that you've always got something to learn. The day that I'm not learning something is the day that I put my retirement letter in the post. But I don't think I was really quite expecting the learning that I had over the last 2 years at Marie Curie. And I'm Dee from Sheffield. I pinch myself every morning because I've got the best job in the world. And I get some of the time to think around what we're doing that maybe people in other acute services don't get. So with the help of ducks, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my journey. So in order to understand how we flourish, you've really, really got to understand the world that we are living and working in. And actually there's a perception that actually if as a nurse you go into palliative care or hospice care, it's sort of not as acute as in an NHS Trust, it's not as stressful, it's not as precious. Our nurses who are working in palliative care with terminal patients are under enormous stress and pressures. Our patients have access to much more complex conditions, complex treatments, and they're often still going under radiotherapy or chemotherapy in the last months and years of their life. They have complex drugs. They have high doses of complex drugs that need titrating and monitoring. And some of the drugs that we use today, when I was in hospice care, you had to come in and be admitted for a week while we titrated them. Now you have a prescription and we do it over the phone. We talk about an ageing population. Well, actually, we're seeing that ageing population really in our hospices and the care that we give. So when I was a hospice nurse in the 90s, you didn't see a patient with dementia in hospice. It was considered a very specialist area. It was mainly just for patients who had cancer. Our nurses today are looking after people who have terminal illness because they've got heart disease, because they've got respiratory disease, because they've got motor neuron disease, and because they have dementia. And those nurses are really, really worried about having the right skills and experience to be able to do the right thing, whatever patient comes through the door, whatever their illness. Huge scandals in nursing over the last few years, and a lot of press and publicity. And actually, palliative care has not been exempt from that. There's been great anxiety about the Liverpool care pathway, And actually that anxiety has challenged fundamental nursing care that we give at the end of life. And then on top of that, anybody heard that there's an economic crisis out there and we've all got to do more for less? We cared for 39,000 people. There are 400,000 people in the UK with a palliative care need today. We only see 1 in 4 of them. And actually we're asking our nurses to see all 4 of those patients. So that's our nurses. They're paddling like mad. Everything looks calm, but they're really paddling like mad. And it's no exemption just because we work in hospice care, what's considered a quieter environment. And what about nurse leaders? And I'm one of those nurse leaders. And actually, we're seen as really removed. So we give up our clinical practice. I haven't, by the way. I'll share that with you. But our nurses look at us and they don't see us. There's 3,000 nurses at Marie Curie, all over the UK. How can I meet all of them? How do I know what it's like for them? How do they actually know me? I don't. So you see the duck in the middle? That's me. That's how the nurses perceive me and most other nurse leaders, because we're the duck going in the opposite direction to them, who has no idea about what it's really like. It's a pretty duck, though. I thought I'd go with Jim. Okay. So when did life start to change for me? Well, it's actually really quite recently. And I want to introduce you to Nick. And that's my dad. That's not me, that's my lovely niece. And my dad was very, very special. He died 12 years ago, and I didn't really understand that 12 years later, that experience would be helping me do something really different. And here's how it happened. I do clinical practice, and I pride myself because I put a uniform on once a month and I go out with my nurses. And I was in Belfast with a community nurse, and we were doing an evening shift. We had 4 patients to see within 4 hours. And when we got to the second patient, the son was at the door meeting us, really worried. He thought his mum had been incontinent, needed changing, and she was poorly. And when we went in, she was poorly. She looked very comfortable. She was responsive, but she wasn't really alert. And as we started to give her some care, she changed quite dramatically, became very, very ill. And we only just got her son back in the room to be with her. The nurse that I was with was absolutely amazing. She was really, really present for that son. So she stayed with him. She waited until she knew the GP and a friend were on the way. And she stood firm when another nurse came in and cajoled her because she ought to move on. She'd got another 2 patients to see. And when she got to the next patient, she was still present with that patient, despite the fact that we'd got lost on the way. We were worried about running late to the next patient, and we'd not really had time to reflect on the lady that had died. Because although it was expected that she would die, it was unexpected that she would die at that moment while we were with her. And I was so amazed by her that I talked about nothing else for the whole week. And actually at the end of the week, somebody said to me, "Are you okay, Dee?" And I said, yeah, I'm okay. I was okay about it. And I sort of thought, I wonder if I asked the nurse if she was okay about it. And then somebody said to me, "How long is it since you were with somebody who was actively dying?" That's me, your nurse leader, and you're looking to me for inspiration. And I thought about it. And actually, it was 11 years earlier. It was 11 years ago that I was with somebody who was actively dying, and it was my dad. And I sort of thought, well, you know, very humbling. It's quite a privilege to be with somebody who's dying. But every time you're with somebody who's dying, you have to give a little bit of yourself. And how do our nurses keep on doing that? And have I really, really ever asked them, how they keep on doing that, and what they need to do it. So, we went and asked them. We went out to 400 nurses, and 95% of them told us that actually, in order to give good care, they need to be developed. And actually, hey-ho, do you know, Marie Curie, your training's crap, because that really doesn't help us develop in any way at all. They told us that they knew they were giving good care because everybody tells them. People describe our nurses as angels coming in the door. But when we probed a little bit later, we had no real evidence of that, in the way that if you're working in an acute trust, you have to provide some evidence about what you do. And actually, we couldn't describe what excellence looked like. So if you can't describe what excellence looks like, how do you know you're giving it? How do you know that you're actually there? We use lots of value words like person-centred, holistic care, kind, trusting, but actually we couldn't string those words together to describe what we were doing. So we had purpose, we were really, really committed about what we were doing, but we couldn't describe it to other people. And they told us that life was changing. It was getting much more difficult. They didn't like the pace, and it wasn't like it was when they came into Marie Curie. And we asked a variety of nurses. Some nurses had only worked with us for a year, some nurses had worked with us for 15 years. Some people were more my age, some people were more your age. Some people worked days and nights, but actually they were all saying the same thing to us. And when we went to our patients and we said, what do you want? They said, all I want is the best possible care, and I want to feel as though I'm getting it from the credible, trusted expert. And your nurses make me feel like that. Some of our nurses are healthcare assistants. They don't have diplomas and qualifications, but they still go in with that sort of philosophy. My PhD will be, what is it? Can I bottle it? Can I sell it? Because I can't describe it. So we know that we have nurses who are really committed and passionate to what they're doing, and we actually know that people want best possible care. And I'm going to whip through because I need a 3 minutes. So you'd think we were lifting off. I've got all that information. Hey-ho, I didn't. I didn't lift off there at all. I tried I asked people, Brendan, do you know what excellent looks like? And people went, no, don't know really. I came up with a definition and they went, that's rubbish, that's not what excellent looks like. So we decided we needed to do something different. And if you think about ducks, they fly in formation and there's not one leader. They take turns to go to the front. And clearly I was the tired flagging duck and needed to come to the back. So we asked people to start at the bottom. Instead of having a definition, what are the subsets, what are the building blocks? And they told us that the building blocks were person-centred practice. They were about being able to work in a culture that was continually learning. It was about working in partnership with others, because nurses don't look on their own, don't look after people who are terminally ill. They want care they want to be able to give the care that makes people feel they're trusted experts, and they want strong clinical leaders. And behind that very nice diagram, there are 10 attributes for each level. And we gave it back to the nurses and we said, here, do a self-assessment, where are you? They all thought they were very highly person-centred. But actually, what it did do was start a discussion, and nurses started saying, actually, am I that good at that? Am I better at this? Actually, what does that look like? And then they actually turned around and said, you know what, we love this. It isn't a performance indicator. Actually, what we want to do is we want to use it as a tool for our ambition. We don't want you to benchmark us with anybody else, but we want to use this and actually do something with it. So, ducks can fly. What have I learned? In order to fly, I need to listen to other people. Do you know what? It's not me that flies, it's you that flies. I've learned that it happens slowly, it doesn't happen quickly. And I've learned to be me and bring me to the party and build on my experiences. What's really important was I educated my heart. I didn't educate my head.